Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be talking about a look ahead to this weekend's box office where Shang-Chi is expected to once again take the crown by a long shot over a brand new film called *Malignant*, which not only is a new horror film, but also is a day-and-date release on HBO Max. But before going any further into what kind of drop-off we are going to see from Shang-Chi, at least based on the estimates, and what it could potentially mean for the box office profitability of Shang-Chi, make sure that you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So as you can see, Shang-Chi has actually been adjusted since last night when I checked it, where it was a little over 50% expected of a drop-off. Now, the new projections for the 3-day second weekend for the film is set to be around $40 million, which would be a very nice 47% drop from week one. Now, if this was indeed to hold and we were to see a 47% drop in the film to make around $40 million, even really anywhere between $35 and $40 million or so would be within that range of around 50%, that would be a very strong hold for this movie, and would seem to indicate then that this film has a lot of legs to it and therefore would be able to reach the point of profitability. Now, the big question mark, however, and again, this is something that some people who are covering these things, right, in the mainstream news might not talk about, is what is the state of the international box office when it comes to this film? Because there is no denial that this is set to be one of the best as far as domestic releases in COVID time. Because if you already look at the film, it is expected to be around $148.4 million by the end of this weekend. So not only is it incredibly quick to reach the $100 million mark when you compare it to other COVID releases, but also it is going to have made more than films like Free Guy, films like Jungle Cruise, and also will very much be on pace to be able to even potentially go up against Black Widow, which of course would be a pretty incredible feat by the very fact that Shang-Chi is not a well-known entity, whereas Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson are. The one difference, of course, that one has to point to is the fact that they do have those Disney Plus Premier Access numbers, of course, which they claim around $60 million or so for that film as far as its opening weekend is concerned in the domestic marketplace. And so if you do take that into account, it does change the game a little bit. However, as I've said, those numbers really aren't all that reliable, at least at this point, right? Until there's an actual, tax filing where they're claiming that kind of a number, or an actual, at least an official breakdown of how they got to that number, right? I think it's important for us to kind of know how many users, what kind of metrics are they using to determine that. Until that happens, again, that number is still very much in flux for me. However, based on pure box office, without taking anything into account as far as streaming is concerned, as you all know, I care about box office stuff because when it comes to, how much HBO Max is bringing in every single month, which can sometimes offset some of the losses that they're seeing from their Warner Brothers films, obviously that is something that is just so unpredictable and really, again, hard to calculate that I tend to just ignore those types of things, even though obviously, because it's, again, all about what the film as an individual film is able to do in comparison to the amount of money that the film actually costs. So as you can see, $40 million expected for Shang-Chi. *Malignant*, the new horror film, expected to make $6.5 million. And obviously, same day, HBO Max release. *Free Guy* continuing to have very small drop-offs, especially domestically, at $5.5 million. *Candyman*, another small drop-off at $5.3 million. *Jungle Cruise* continuing to make a little bit with $2.6 million, but its massive $200 million budget and the fact it did not do nearly as well overseas is going to, of course, have that film still be in the flop category. But films like Free Guy and Shang-Chi, at the very least, have a chance. Now, here is the one question mark I think that exists for Shang-Chi is the film, one, going to actually get to the $40 million it's projected to make this weekend? And what kind of, I guess, two questions. And the second one would be, how well is it doing in the foreign marketplace? Because obviously, when you talk about box office, you can't just look at the domestic number, right? This looks very impressive, the $148 million. But when you look and compare it to what the film is doing internationally, it's not as impressive as what we're seeing domestically. Well, first off, let's go ahead and put a little bit of a competition up between Black Widow and Shang-Chi. So this is something you can do on thenumbers.com. It's one of the things that I really like about thenumbers.com is you can actually do a day and day comparison between films. And I mentioned this in a previous video where Black Widow beat Shang-Chi in its opening Friday, opening Saturday, whereas Shang-Chi won on Sunday and of course on Monday, which was the Labor Day holiday. However, once we started to go into regular days, we started to see, wait a minute, Black Widow overperformed, or rather outperformed Shang-Chi, not just on its first Tuesday, but also on its first Wednesday as well. We don't have yet the Thursday numbers or the second Friday numbers, but if this trend holds of Black Widow doing better, at least during the week, and if that holds into the weekend, then obviously that would throw in some question marks as far as whether Shang-Chi is going to be able to reach that $40 million that's expected to make, because when you do the maths on that, you see you're looking at a film, as far as Black Widow is concerned, that made a little under $30 million or so in its second weekend. And so if, again, it continues to have this trend of losing to Black Widow day to day, it would seem to indicate then that the number would come in well under the $40 million estimate. Now, weekends, of course, are different. Weekends are not the same as weekdays, and you could also very much have another major push coming from the studio, right? Obviously, Disney wants to continue the Shang-Chi train going. They want to be able to push the, hey, 46%, 47% drop off, right? One of the lowest drops in history, right? They want to continue the historical narrative that they've been pushing ever since the Labor Day narrative. They're going to keep on doing that because obviously they want to make money. And so far this year, they have not had any films that have been able to really make them any major mass profits as far as their major budget releases are concerned. And so with this in mind then, if this film is able to then come in and is able to get to a certain point internationally, especially, we could still see the film make that much money. Here's the thing, though. Internationally, Black Widow, right? Not only with the domestic, because obviously Shang-Chi is doing incredibly well there, but with everything, Black Widow made $264 and reached $264 million by its second weekend. The question is or are we going to see Shang-Chi be able to do the same thing or not? As of right now, the film is at $162 million. That would mean in order for the film to be able to reach the same levels at the same amount of time and the same length of time as Black Widow, it would have to make another $100 million or so, a little under $100 million internationally. So it's already expected to make around $40 million. So this film is expected then, if it's going to be on pace with Black Widow, is going to have to make around $60 million from all of the different markets in the international marketplace. That is absolutely doable. However, when you compare the fact that domestically the film right now is at $105 million, whereas internationally it's at $56 million, that would mean that it would have to do better in its second weekend than it did in its first weekend internationally. Now, there's a couple of things that could be factors that could lead to that type of seemingly anomaly happen. And that, of course, is if it's opening up in other countries for the first time, because obviously those would be new numbers coming in. And that would, of course, lead to a higher box office potentially. But if it's not going to be released in any other major marketplaces, that could, again, spell a bit of an issue for the international release of this film overall. And speaking of those releases, let's see if there is anything that we can actually look to as far as future releases are concerned. As of right now, it is saying here, as far as the box office per territory and release, that it seems that it's been released in almost all the countries that it needs to be released in. Now, sometimes these websites don't have all that information, which is why I have to go to sites like IMDb, because that's a site I at least do know, even though I hate the way that they have changed their site over the years and how to find things over the years. What I do know is that IMDb is very good as far as listing the types of and the amount of release dates and where and when. They're very good at keeping track of those things. So anyway, as you can see, huge releases so far for this film have already taken place. The only new country that is going to get a release this weekend is Greece. Greece, not really known notoriously for having major box office. After that, Thailand, September 16th. Now, of course, there's always that off chance that they might be able to work something out with China and get a release there, but as of right now, that is not happening. So when you take that into account, where it's only adding Greece to its numbers, and that films always see drop-offs in their second weekend, if you're going to tell me that somehow, some way, Shang-Chi, even though it's doing incredibly well domestically, again, there's no one taking that away, But if you're going to tell me that the film, based on what it would need to in order to at least match up to Black Widow, is going to make another $60 million, meaning it's going to make more in its second weekend internationally than it did in its first, when there are no new territories and where you notoriously see drop-offs. As you can see, the problem that Shang-Chi has, and again, MCU stands, calm down here, these are just numbers. The problem that the film has is that even though it is incredibly successful as far as COVID time in domestic, it is not as successful in the international market. It is not doing as well in the international marketplace. You have places like South Korea where it's getting 6.5, have places like Russia with 3.8, Mexico with 2.2, Australia 1.9, Spain, Italy. Again, all of these other countries are providing various numbers for it. But what you do not have is a major showing from this film in the international marketplace. And just to double check myself, I will pull up, because sometimes you do find that the numbers will fall behind just a little bit when it comes to reporting on box office numbers. And so we'll go ahead then and pull up Box Office Mojo just to see exactly what the numbers are as of right now. So $162 million. So again, it's still at that place, still at $56 million internationally. And as, again, I mentioned before, this will actually have a fuller breakdown of what it's been making in different countries. So there was the United Kingdom was not showing on the numbers, even though it was being reported in the total. So 7.9 million in the UK. So again, a pretty strong number for that movie. But as I said, you're going to see an opening, right? An opening is going to be, the opening internationally was around that $56 million mark. You cannot tell me logically how internationally, opening up only now in Greece, it's going to be able to make more internationally in its second weekend. I just don't see that being in the cards for this specific movie, which leads us with a couple of things. For one, this movie did cost $50 million less than what Black Widow did. So it doesn't have to reach the same level that Black Widow did. This is true. It does not have to reach that same level in order to reach profitability. However, if this still holds where it does continue to do well, let's say it reaches $200 million domestically. Again, that's very much possible at this point. Probably on the higher end of what this film, or at least the mid to high end of what this film would make by the end of its run domestically. $200 million domestic. Well, let's say the movie has about a 50 to 60% drop off internationally. You're looking at a movie that's going to make, a little over $100 million maybe by the end of its run internationally, unless it opens up in different countries that have not been announced yet, which is totally possible. That would mean the film would be around $300 million. Let's then just assume that it does really well, or better than better in some of those different areas that we're not accounting for, and let's put another $50 million. Even at $350 million worldwide, this film still would not break even. This film needs to make $375 million in order for it to break even based on the given production budget, based on typical marketing cost. That would be the number it has to reach. And as you can see, the issue that this film is going to have going forward is actually not really in the domestic market, because it's doing better than I think what a lot of people, including industry experts, would have expected. But is it going to be able to do anything in the international marketplace? At this point, it is not impressing on the international stage, and it is not seen to be in a position to do so based on the two countries it has yet to open in, Greece and Thailand, not known for major box office numbers, and the fact that we are naturally going to see a drop-off in a second weekend of this film internationally. So, is the film going to be able to have some type of narrative about how successful it is, in the domestic marketplace? Absolutely. Based on these estimates, if they hold true, no doubt about it. 47% drop-off is very good. But the international number is the one that no one is talking about, and it is still an incredibly important piece of the puzzle. If we're talking about the profitability of a movie, that is a major piece of it. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that Shang-Chi is going to be able to get to this $40 million for the domestic? It's totally possible, though I do think that I do have some questions as far as the day and date when you compare it to films like Black Widow, where again, ever since after, from Tuesday and Wednesday, it lost to what Black Widow did historically on those first Tuesday and Wednesdays after its release. Weekends are a different animal, so obviously that could indicate that it could still do better in that time, but it can also be, looking at those Tuesdays and Wednesdays, it could be an indication that the film is dropping off a little bit. We'll have to wait and see. But even more so, do you think the international number is going to have an impact on whether this film can be profitable or not? Do you think there is a ceiling to this movie and how much it can make, because it can only get so much from the international marketplace before, again, the domestic can only hold it up really for so long? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below this video. Smash that like button, light that fire button. It really does mean a lot. You're all amazing, beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. You are fantastic. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my September Locals Patreon and Subscribe Star members. First with my Locals members, Cats App, D Sharp, It's a Modern Major General Story, Bifford Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. I want to give a shout out to, especially to Laura, who is now a double supporter on Locals and on Patreon. So thank you for that. And to all of my Locals members. A shout out also to my Patreon members, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Garney, Gomer Kyle 79, the Modern Major General Story once again, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out also to my Subscribe Star members, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single video or live stream on the main channel, please check out the links in the description below, specifically that top link, which will bring you to all of the links to my various social media pages and also places of support as well. And remember that if you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also get access to giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I have a live giveaway of Snatch on 4K Steelbook. I've also got ones for Dread, Wrath of Man Blu-ray. I've also got A Quiet Place Part 2 on 4K. I've got Top Gun on 4K, Sicario on 4K, tons of films and more to come, especially as more films are getting released for those giveaways. At the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Not only do you get to listen to the podcast, you also get to ask questions that we answer as much as we can and as fully as we can in a much more, I guess you could say, uncensored way, but again, a much more free-flowing way for our members over there at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. And if you join the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get access to all of those things, plus in your first month, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, and I send it to you no matter where you are in the world. And also, you get to once a month be featured on the channel in the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we talk about movie, news, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about. So if that all sounds like fun to you, check out those links below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.